Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today, I'm pleased to present you with an overview and my first impressions of our latest exciting new spoiler article recently published by Fantasy Flight Games, entitled Strange Alliances. We've previously established that we'll be seeing the Astra Militarum Warlord Broderick War in our upcoming Decree of Ruin War Pack, the very first release of the Planetfall cycle of war packs, but thanks to today's article, we've now seen the complete reveal of a second warlord for that very expansion, Commander Starblaze of the Tau Empire. So, though we've previously had spoiled an upcoming third Orc warlord, Gorzod, who also happens to bend established deck-building ally restrictions, he won't actually be released until Deadly Salvage, which is War Pack number 3. So, therefore, Commander Starblaze will be the first time we experience ally options as they currently exist turned entirely on their head, because instead of opting to include either Space Marines or Eldar cards in your Tau deck, if you just so happen to be playing our new warlord, you're forced to deck build entirely differently than ever before by filling your deck with any number of common Astra Militarum cards that you'd like, but you're resultingly disallowed from including any other cards from another non-Tau faction. So that means no Space Marines and no Eldar, just Tau and Astra Militarum. And with the understanding from our lead LCG designer Brad Andrees that common essentially means any non-loyal card, this warlord affords Tau faction players a whole new world of deck building options that they've never had before, and as will become abundantly clear throughout the course of this video, that offers some exceptionally compelling new card synergies and possibilities. For instance, not only will the Tau player have access to the tried and true command phase savvy recon drone and Vashia Trailblazer, but if they're in want of as many cheap 2-command icon units as possible, they'll also be able to enlist the likes of Sanction Psyker and Iron Guard recruits as well, which could make for a grand total of 12 army units in any given deck with 2 command icons. But before we delve too deep into powerful card interactions, I want to take just a moment to commend our design team for this card's fantastic execution of theme and adaptation of 40k lore. Commander Starblaze is very much meant to be leading what the Tau call Gaivesa, or in other words, human beings that have essentially enlisted in and now fight alongside the Tau Empire. Viewed as traitors of the worst description by the Imperium of Mankind, the Ecclesiarchy itself views such former citizens as having been either corrupted or tainted as the result of their volitional involvement and association with an inferior, foreign, and in any case alien and heretical Xenos culture. Still, while the Imperium rules its people and citizenship with somewhat of an iron fist and tends to offer a rather bleak future for the vast majority of its populace, the Tau Empire instead offers freedom from the mandatory tithes, taxes, bureaucracy, and strictly enforced religious doctrine and dogma of the Imperium. The Tau are both zealous and adamant in their pursuit of that which they call the greater good, which is to say that essentially, as a people, they want to achieve the best, most successful, prosperous, peaceful, and enjoyable existence for as many sentient beings as is possible, and in an attempt to accomplish this, the Tau seek ever to continue to expand their still burgeoning empire, and in doing so, to absorb and incorporate as many other cultures as they can. And the Tau fully understand that every world or population they can win over through diplomacy ends up potentially saving them from having to employ or expend a tremendous amount of military might. The Tau believe that even the lowest of sentient beings matter, at least in some sense, and their promise of freedom and peace, and importantly, protection from repercussion against any people the Imperium has deemed as traitors, gives glimmers of hope to many Imperial citizens that may otherwise have none. So, as a result, these Gaivesa have become a relatively common sight in the armed forces of the Tau Empire, and in battle tend to serve alongside fire warriors. So, while such soldiers are entirely free to continue their worship of the God Emperor of mankind, should they so choose, they're indeed allowed by the Tau to do so, even in the midst of fighting alongside the Tau and using advanced Xenos weapons technology, even if it just so happens that they're pit against the military might of the Imperium itself. But before we go any further, let's assess Commander Starblaze as a warlord unit himself. And apart from his unique ally rule, he has 2 printed attacks, 6 hit points, and begins the game with 7 cards in hand alongside 7 starting resources. Also, he reads Reaction. After this Tau warlord commits to a planet, move 1 Astra Militarum unit you control from an adjacent planet to that planet. So, once you send Commander Starblaze to a planet, he can either relocate an AM unit to help him conquer the opposition, or he could deny your opponent's warlord the opportunity to kill off one of your allied AM units. And what's exceptionally nice is that if you are committing your warlord into the thick of an upcoming battle, depending on where your opponent sends their warlord, with that information in mind, you can then decide either to trigger his reaction and reel in backup to his planet, or if you otherwise feel confident in your ability to win without calling in the reserves, you can simply allow your AM unit at the adjacent planet to sit exactly where it stands. So perhaps instead of being forced to abandon winning or tying a command struggle, you are able to successfully win those cards and or resources for yourself, or at the very least, deny them of your opponent. And another fantastic opportunity that Commander Starblaze affords prospective Tau players is that you can not only play but also relocate the 1-cost Rattling Deadeye as necessary. And considering that you can use any common Astra Militarum cards, one of which happens to be the 2-cost support Catachan Outpost, whether it's the Rattling, a Viorla Marksman, a Stingwing Swarm, or any other ranged keyword unit, each and every instance of a +2 attack boost could dramatically increase the likelihood of your being able to bloody or even outright kill your opponent's warlord or highest value unit. And by throwing in ambush platform, ion rifle, and myriad other attachments, you only stand to achieve all the more ridiculous ranged skirmish effects. For instance, using Commander Starblaze to move a Rattling Deadeye from Planet 2 to Planet 1, only to have an ambush platform subsequently attach gun drones to that ranged Astra Militarum unit strikes me as exceptionally powerful, and Starblaze himself enables a tremendous number of other combat tricks that are certain to take even the most astute, practiced, and perceptive of opponents at least occasionally by surprise. I think staging ground plus Borkon recruits for an unexpected 4 attack value at any planet which happens to possess a warlord is yet another example of a simple yet staggeringly powerful and effective combo, and it only stands to get all the more ridiculous when you stop to think that an ambush platform could subsequently deploy a copy of hostile environment gear attached to that Borkon recruits in order to immediately transform it into a 4 attack 5 HP unit. And if you also consider further that those recruits happen to have that printed soldier trait, and that they're therefore able to deposit 1 to 3 copies of the ally Elysian assault team in their wake upon their eventually being destroyed, then the potential for mid-combat shenanigans seems almost limitless. But still, myriad other exciting possibilities exist. You could play Fire Warrior Elite, which has a mutually protective relationship with one or more copies of Steel Legion Chimera, so your opponent could try to attack the Chimera, and you serve only to redirect their attack, reduce it by 1 to the 5 hit point Fire Warrior. Or, if you manage to get multiple copies of that vehicle in play, you might reduce all incoming attack damage by 2 or even 3, and combine those units with the likes of the aforementioned hostile environment gear with or without an attached repulsor impact field, and the opportunity to play any number of shield cards from your hand, and things get out of control for your opponent very quickly. You could even run the normally fragile experimental Devilfish, played out for 3 resources and affix a 0-cost Dozer Blade, transforming it into a 4-attack, 4-hit point unit that would be quite content to aggressively, repeatedly push the first planet alongside your Warlord, serving only to ready each and every time it ends up swept into your Warlord's retinue, and then commit to a planet. And what's even better is that, in my opinion, calling that delightful 2-card combo the experimental Dozerfish is absolutely hilarious. But despite the outrageous combos, you can, of course, simply use this for its most simple, subtle effect, which is just relocating any of your AM units in order to ensure that they'll be ready for the first round of the following turn's combat phase. So, taken all together, whether you're doing something sneaky and deceptive, or whether you're doing something relatively simple and straightforward, I think suffice it to say that Commander Starblaze certainly opens up a wealth of new possibilities for any prospective Tau player to consider. But in moving right along, we have the first of Commander Starblaze's signature squad, the 2-cost army unit Ardent Auxiliaries. It has 1 command icon, an attack value of 2, and a pool of 2 hit points. It has the soldier trait and reads reaction. After this unit commits to a planet, if you control an Astra Militarum unit at this planet, ready this unit. So, obviously, you could simply have this unit fight at the first planet, get taken up into your Warlord's headquarters retinue, and then, during a subsequent round's command phase, if you happen to send your Warlord to a planet possessing an AM unit under your control, you simply ready the auxiliaries, and they can then both count their command icon toward your total and strike during the first round of combat. And considering that reactions occur one at a time in the order defined by the controlling player, even if you don't happen to possess an Astra Militarum unit at the planet that your Warlord was commit to, you could trigger your Warlord's reaction to pull an AM unit to that planet, and then trigger this reaction in order to successfully ready your unit. And of course, given their cost and their traits, this is yet another fantastic target for Staging Ground and Elysian Assault Team. So while it may not be the most exhilarating and exciting of signature army units, certainly any modicum of action advantage is scarcely unwelcome, and a 2/2 for 2 with a command icon that can potentially ready, commit alongside your Warlord certainly strikes me as being far from objectable, but still moving ever along. Next up, we happen to have our signature attachment, the Searing Burst Cannon. It has a cost of 1 as well as 3 shield icons. It has the war gear and weapon traits as well as the text attached to a unit. Interrupt. When attached unit damages an enemy unit by an attack, if no shield card was used during this attack, double the damage taken. So, it's very important, I think, to consider that you can attach this to any unit, but let's focus first on your Warlord. If you manage to play this early, it means your Warlord will be attacking for 4, unless your opponent is very free with their shield cards. And granted, 6 HP doesn't make Commander Starblaze the most durable of Warlords, but this attachment could allow you some fantastic early game pressure with which to convince your opponent opponent to continually expend shield cards that would have likely better served them saved to be discarded later, or otherwise to be played as traditional attachments or events. And since, unlike Commander Shadowsun, Commander Starblaze has no means of recurring the likes of a heavy marker drones once they happen to enter your discard pile, this could afford you a fantastic opportunity, perhaps if combined with an ion rifle, to overcome all but the hardiest and absolute most resilient of enemies, and definitely consider that this attachment will also potentially double damage dealt to your opponent's Warlord or Synapse unit. And since you're likely to be running Ambush Platform in a Commander Starblaze deck, I think that often enough you could simply keep this card in hand in case it's needed as shields, and then if you're convinced that your opponent has indeed expended all of their shield cards, or maybe they've completely run out of cards in hand, you can simply ambush this card into play for a cost of 0, and then proceed to utterly devastate your opposition. In fact, your opponent may very well allow some of their units to needlessly die, simply so they can hold on to at least one shield card, even if it does happen to have only a single printed icon, just to prevent their Warlord from being outright bloodied or killed due to some unexpected damage doubling effect. But throw in even the odds to move this from an exhausted unit to one immediately ready to attack, and this attachment stands only to become all the more powerful. So certainly not an insurmountable effect by any means, definitely not a card that's going to make or break your opponent, but definitely powerful in any sense, and if at any point you need expend it to prevent the bloodying or death of your Warlord, then so be it. But next up, we happen to have his support, the 2-cost unique Starblaze's Outpost. It has the location trait and action. Exhaust this support and return an Astra Militarum army unit at a planet to your hand to put a Tau unit with equal or lower printed cost into play from your hand at the same planet. So, though we've yet to see an Astra Militarum unit that provides their controller a benefit from being put into play, and through this support that's something that potentially could occur repeatedly, this card nevertheless affords players the chance to bounce an exhausted, hopefully severely damaged, nearly dead AM unit to their hand in order to immediately replace it with an entirely hale, ready to attack and equivalently costed Tau unit. I think a great target that comes immediately to mind would be the 3-resource cost Steel Legion Chimera, and because of its damage reduction effect, it quickly becomes a priority target for your enemy. So perhaps it itself attacks, takes a few points of damage in return, and all the while it's of course protecting some of your more valuable targets, either through reducing damage or simply encouraging your opponent to be attacking it instead of the squishier options. Once the Steel Legion Chimera is nearly dead, you can simply return it to your hand, only to replace it with any other 3 or lower cost Tau unit. Perhaps something like a 3-attack, 3-hit point Carnivore pack, which would generate you 3 free resources as soon as it happens to be destroyed, or an experimental Devilfish, like I mentioned earlier, which could immediately attack for 4. Or maybe something like a Fire Warrior Elite, which could continue that protection theme in drawing incoming enemy fire and attacks from the rest of your army. And of course, the more expensive the unit you return to hand, all the more options you ultimately afford yourself. For instance, a 6-cost Shrieking Basilisk could easily become a Sakea XV88 broadside, and considering the myriad other mid-combat tricks you could combine this with, it just makes Commander Starblaze all the more compelling a Warlord. You could have a 2-cost Tau soldier, like the often enough 4-attack Borkon recruits, fight until it eventually dies, and then you replace it upon its death with an Elysian assault team. You could have that unit attack for 2, and then return it to hand, only to immediately replace it with maybe another copy of Borkon recruits, recruits, or any other 2-cost Tau unit. And then, when that unit finally dies, if it happens to be a soldier, like those Borkon recruits are, you could play that Elysian Assault team again, only to attack once again for 2. So definitely color me very curious indeed as to what else eventually becomes possible through Starblaze's Outpost. But last but not least, we have a relatively straightforward event, the 2-cost Bond of Brotherhood, which has 1 shield icon and the tactic trait. Further, it reads action. Until the end of the phase, each Tau unit you control at a target planet gets +2 HP, and each Astra Militarum unit you control at the targeted planet gets +2 attack. So, whether you're simply using this to make your units more survivable, more deadly, or a combination of both, for scarcely few resources this could make a tremendous difference as to the outcome of any battle, whether it's the game-deciding pivotal conflict of the match, or simply a fight for a specific battle ability you'd like to have activated. Keep in mind that this will only affect units currently in play at the time that this event is played, and that ephemeral HP boost only persists until the end of the phase, so therefore some of your units could potentially die upon the conclusion of the combat phase if they suddenly happen to possess a number of damage tokens equal to or exceeding their printed hit points, but still, this is exceptionally powerful and will stack with itself if both of 2 signature copies end up being played back to back. Plus, I think one exceptionally potent use for this event would be on those rattling deadeyes that I mentioned earlier. For example, say that your opponent commits their warlord to a planet. You could use Staging Ground to deploy a rattling deadeye to that planet during the combat phase, and then supplement that lowly ranged unit with any combination of Bond of Brotherhood, Catachan Outpost, and or an ambush-platformed ion rifle, and your opponent is immediately going to be forced to deal with one hell of a nasty ranged skirmish phase. But of course, all these combos and card interactions are strictly my initial impressions, and I by no means touched on all available synergy, so please, by all means, share your own thoughts in the comments. But our article does not end here, for we also glean a few spoilers from a card fan. From left to right, we see the 3-cost Dark Eldar stalking Urgul. We can discern 0 command icons, but an attack value of 3 with 3 printed hit points. There's a bit of text mentioning something to do with no attachments, and another something that looks like a warlord-specific restriction of some sort, but apart from that, we know nothing. It seems like the stats are great for the cost, but apart from knowing that Urguls in the 40k lore are sightless, dexterous predators adept at tracking their prey through the labyrinthine Dark Eldar cities, we know not else. We see next the aptly named 2-cost Chaos event, Sowing Chaos, which has 1 shield icon, and we again see the Death Skull Orc artwork depicted within the previously spoiled but here unnamed Lucky War Paint, though we glean no additional printed text. We see our aforediscussed Ardent Auxiliaries, but do finally receive one full additional spoiler, the Tyranid attachment Acid Maw. And with a cost of 2, 1 printed shield icon, and the war gear and biomorph traits, I'm comfortable assuming it explicitly reads, attached to an army unit you control. Damage dealt by attached unit cannot be prevented. So clearly it's powerful, and may in fact compete with the spot held in many Tyranid decks by no mercy, if players are in search of something to prevent their attacks from being shielded against. But further, although it can't force your opponent to waste a shield card like that neutral event can, it's in many ways more powerful because it entirely circumvents and avoids damage prevention or cancellation effects like Indomitable and Custom Field Generator. And plus, once you do invest 2 resources into this attachment, you'll want to try to leverage as many effects as you can in order to afford the attached unit additional attacks. So it not only works great in an old One-Eye deck with his signature support, the any unit readying Awakening Cavern, but also, provided that you can infest planets, it could also be fantastic alongside the 2-cost event Dark Cunning, which serves to ready any target Tyrannid non-warlord unit. And since we know that in our Decree of Ruin War Pack, we're also going to see the 3-attack Striking Ravener, a Tyrannid elite army unit that happens to ready each and every time it manages to kill an enemy army unit through an attack, it seems like these 2 cards are going to be natural allies. And given the opportunity, even without any other additional synergistic effects or combos, the Ravener could itself kill off any number of vulnerable enemy army units and then give one final unpreventable strike in order to deal out 3 points of damage to a unit that might, unfortunately, otherwise not be eligible to be destroyed outright in only 1 attack. But with all that covered, we can now consider our latest article covered in its entirety. So I'll just end this video by saying thank you once again for watching, and of course, please leave your own thoughts about our new Tau Warlord and all of these cards in the comments section below. Will Commander Starblaze be a viable competitive warlord? And if so, or if not, what are some of your personal favorite new Tau and Astra Militarum card combos and synergies? Be sure to let me know in the comments. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more people happen to stumble across these videos, the more individuals might like what they see, give Conquest a try, end up joining our community, and of course, send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to do so through Twitter or on Facebook, and if at any point you feel so inclined to do the equivalent of buying me a cup of coffee in hope of helping me cover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be honored and humbled were you to donate me $1 or $2 a month on my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.